Usually when we sit down to look at medical breakthroughs on this show, we're talking about the absolute cutting edge.
Oh, absolutely. CRISPR, AI diagnostics, these massive machines that look like they belong on a spaceship.
Right. We always associate progress with, complexity.
That is the default setting for modern medicine, for
Yeah.
sure. We're always looking for the newest, shiniest tool in the shed.
But today, we're doing something a little different. We're looking at a stack of research that suggests the next big leap in a very, very high-tech field fertility treatment might actually come from integrating something, well, incredibly ancient.
We are talking about acupuncture and herbal medicine.
Exactly.
And before anyone rolls their eyes and thinks we're about to talk about magic potions or, like, energy auras, I want to stop you right there.
Please do.
The document we are deep diving into today, it's titled Integrating Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine for Fertility and Pregnancy, and it is dense with data. I mean, we are talking randomized controlled trials, meta-analyses, hard biological mechanisms.
That is exactly why I wanted to cover this. The mission today is to strip away the mysticism. We're going to look at this strictly through the lens of physiology. We all know IVF is a miracle. It's science fiction made real.
It is.
But the success rates aren't 100%. In fact, for many people, they're heartbreakingly lower than that.
Right. It's such an emotional roller coaster. And while IVF is incredible at handling the genetics, the seed, if you will, patients are asking more and more, what about the soil?
The environment.
What about the environment that embryo is actually trying to grow in?
So that is our big question today. Does sticking needles in specific points or taking specific herbal formulations actually change the biology of the uterus enough to matter?
And spoiler alert,
Go on.
the numbers we have here suggest the answer is a resounding yes. A yes backed by some pretty significant statistical evidence.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. The source material outlines these 4 pillars for a successful pregnancy. I found this really helpful because fertility can feel like this total black box.
Oh, for sure.
But this kind of breaks it down into a checklist.
It really does simplify the complexity. I mean, if you want a pregnancy to stick, you basically need 4 things working together. First, adequate uterine blood flow.
Okay.
Second, you need a properly developed endometrium. That's the lining. Third, balanced inflammatory signaling. And fourth, optimal hormonal support.
Let's unpack that first one. Blood flow. Why is that number 1?
It all comes down to oxygen. The clinical term in the research is uterine perfusion. You have to remember, the uterus is a muscle, but the lining, the endometrium with the embryo implants, is this highly vascular tissue. It needs a massive amount of oxygen and nutrients.
So if the blood flow is weak, the embryo is basically starving.
Exactly. It's like trying to water a garden with a kink in the hose. And this is where we get into the first major mechanism for acupuncture. The source cites this pivotal study by Stenner Victorn from 2003.
This is the one with electroacupuncture, right?
Yes, and that sounds way more intense than it is. It's essentially standard acupuncture, but they run a very mild, painless electric current through the needles.
To stimulate the nerves more effectively.
Right. And they were looking at something specific called the uterine artery pulsatility index.
Pulsatility index. Okay, that sounds like something I'd see on a submarine dashboard. Translate that for us.
Yeah. Just think of it as a measure of resistance in your pipes. If you have a high pulsatility index, high resistance, it means the blood vessels are constricted.
Okay, tight.
So the heart has to pump harder to push blood through, and less of it actually reaches the destination. It's that kink in the hose we just talked about.
And what causes that kink in the first place?
Often it's the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. When your body is stressed, and let's be honest, going through infertility is incredibly stressful.
Understatement of the year.
Right. Your body prioritizes survival. It shunts blood to your heart and your muscles and away from what it sees as non-essential systems like reproduction.
So your body's basically saying, we can't have a baby right now, we're running from a tiger.
Precisely. And what Stenner Victorn found was that electroacupuncture inhibits that sympathetic nervous system activity. It flips the switch. They measured the pulsatility index before and after, and the resistance just dropped significantly.
So they objectively proved that the hose unkinked.
Yes. And this wasn't a subjective survey where people said, oh, I feel more relaxed. This was a measurable change in the physics of the vascular system.
That's a crucial distinction. We're not talking about relaxing the mind. We're talking about physically altering blood resistance. But here's the question every patient asks. Does better blood flow actually result in more babies?
That is the metric that matters. And for that, we have to look at the landmark study. It's by Paulus and his team, published in Fertility and Sterility back in 2002. If you look into this topic, this is the study everyone talks about.
Okay, so walk us through this setup.
It was a controlled study with women undergoing IVF, and they were looking specifically at the embryo transfer phase.
That critical moment.
The most critical moment. So they split the women into two groups. The control group got standard, high-quality IVF care. The treatment group got that same care, but they also received an acupuncture protocol.
Okay.
One session, 25 minutes before the transfer, and another session, 25 minutes after.
That is a very specific window. Why right then?
The theory was to maximize that perfusion, that blood flow right when the embryo is arriving, and also to help reduce any uterine contractions that might, expel the embryo.
Makes sense. And the results?
They were shocking to a lot of people at the time. The pregnancy rate for the control group, the one with just IVF, was 26.3%.
Which is pretty standard for 2002, yeah.
Right. But the group that got the acupuncture, their pregnancy rate was 42.5%.
Wow. 26% versus 42. That is nearly doubling the success rate.
It is a massive statistical jump. And obviously, when a number that big comes out, the scientific community gets, very skeptical.
Sure. Was it a fluke? Was it a placebo effect?
All fair questions. The placebo effect is real. But the source material lists several big meta-analyses that came out in the years after to verify this. These are reviews that crunched the data from lots of different studies.
And did the signal hold up?
It did. A big review in Reproductive Biomedicine Online in 2018 confirmed that acupuncture around the time of embryo transfer significantly increased clinical pregnancy rates. And another one in the journal Medicine in 2017 looked at an even more important metric.
Let me guess. Live birth rates.
Exactly. Because a positive test is one thing, but taking a baby home is the goal.
The only thing that matters, yeah.
And they found that IVF plus acupuncture improved live birth rates compared to IVF alone. So we aren't looking at a single outlier study. We are looking at a consistent trend in the data.
Okay, so we've covered blood flow and success rates. But you mentioned the lining earlier, the endometrium. This is a huge issue. I hear about thin lining causing canceled IVF cycles all the time.
It is a very common barrier. You
Yeah.
can have a genetically perfect embryo, but if the lining is less than, say, 7 millimeters, it's like trying to plant a seed on a concrete sidewalk. It just can't root.
And the research says acupuncture can help this.
Yes, and it ties right back to the blood flow. If you improve the perfusion to the uterine artery, you're delivering more building blocks to that tissue. The source indicates that acupuncture can help increase endometrial thickness.
Turning that concrete into deep, rich soil.
That's the goal.
But it's not just about blood, right? It's also about hormones. The source mentions the HPO axis.
Right, the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. This is the communication loop between your brain and your ovaries.
It sounds like a Wi-Fi connection.
That is a great analogy, actually. Your brain sends a signal hormones like FSH or LH telling the ovary to do something, grow an egg, release progesterone. The ovary then sends a signal back.
A feedback loop.
Exactly. But things like stress, age, inflammation, they can introduce static into that signal. The brain shouts, but the ovary doesn't hear it properly.
And that leads to things like irregular ovulation.
Exactly, or something called a luteal phase defect. That's when the body just doesn't produce enough progesterone after ovulation to hold on to a pregnancy. The research in our source shows that acupuncture can help regulate the HPO axis, effectively clearing the static from the line.
So you get a clearer signal, a better hormonal response, and a more stable environment for that early pregnancy.
Correct. So that covers the physics side of it, the nerves, the electricity, the blood flow. But we really need to switch gears to the chemistry side.
Right, the herbal medicine. Now, I feel like this is where people get even more skeptical. We can visualize a needle stimulating a nerve, but drinking a decoction of roots and leaves, it feels a little softer.
It might feel softer, but the biological impact is actually quite aggressive in a good way. The source cites a study by Reed and colleagues published in Complementary Therapies in Medicine in 2015.
What did they find?
They followed women over a 4-month period. One group used Western fertility drugs, or just standard care. The other group used Chinese herbal medicine. Okay. The women using the herbs were approximately twice as likely to achieve pregnancy.
Twice as likely. There is that doubling stat again.
It keeps showing up. And to understand why herbs would have that effect, we have to talk about egg quality.
Now, wait a minute. The standard medical wisdom is that egg quality is fixed. You're born with all the eggs you'll ever have, and they just age. Can you actually improve the quality of an egg that's been sitting there for 30 or 40 years?
That is the prevailing dogma, but it's incomplete. Yes, the DNA inside is fixed. You can't change the genetics. But the environment that egg matures in for the 90 days before ovulation is critical. And the biggest enemy in that phase is oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress, that's basically rusting, right, from the inside out.
Essentially, yes, it's cellular rust caused by these reactive molecules. As we age, or if we have inflammation, this oxidative stress attacks the mitochondria of the egg.
The mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. I remember that from high school biology.
It's the battery pack. An egg needs a tremendous amount of energy to fertilize and start dividing. If that battery is damaged by oxidative rust, the egg might fertilize, but it stalls out. It creates an embryo that stops growing on day 3 or day 5.
So how did the herbs fix the battery?
Chinese herbal formulations are incredibly dense with antioxidant compounds. The source explains that these specific compounds go in and reduce oxidative damage in the ovarian tissues. They're scrubbing the rust off the machinery.
So if the acupuncture is the irrigation system for the soil, the herbs are the fertilizer for the seed itself.
That is a perfect way to put it. You are improving the mitochondrial capacity of the egg before it even leaves the ovary.
I have to ask the safety question, though. If these herbs are powerful enough to scrub rust off my cells, aren't they powerful enough to mess with my IVF meds?
That is a very valid and very important concern.
If I'm injecting thousands of dollars of hormones, I don't want an herb canceling them out.
Absolutely not. And that is why the source material is incredibly specific about who should be managing this. This is not a DIY situation. You can't just go to the health food store and buy a generic fertility tea.
Right.
The source highlights a real-world example of how this is done correctly, the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness in New York.
They've been around since 1997, I think.
Yes, one of the first exclusively fertility-focused integrative clinics in the U.S. And the founder, Mike Berkeley, he has a credential that's really important for people to look for: FABORM.
FABORM. Okay, let's decode that alphabet soup.
It stands for Fellow of the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine. It means the practitioner has passed a rigorous board exam covering both Eastern medicine and Western reproductive physiology.
So they know what an FSH level means. They know how IVF drugs actually work.
Exactly. They know the half-life of the drugs you are taking. The source notes that Berkeley collaborates directly with reproductive endocrinologists. It is not us versus them. It's complementary.
So they aren't going to give you an herb that clashes with your stimulation meds.
Correct. In fact, they tailor the herbal protocols to the specific phase of the IVF cycle. There are herbs to help recruit follicles, herbs to thicken the lining, and then crucially, they usually stop certain herbs right before the embryo transfer to ensure total safety.
It seems like that collaborative approach is really the key here. You have the Western doctor handling the high-tech stuff, the seed, and the Eastern practitioner handling the soil.
The blood flow, the inflammation, the oxidative stress, it's the yes-and approach. And frankly, for patients who have had recurrent failures, recurrent implantation failure, miscarriage, what have you, this integrated approach offers a physiological explanation for why it might not have worked before.
It addresses the variables that the petri dish just can't.
Exactly. We mentioned inflammation is the third pillar. Chronic, low-grade inflammation tells the body this environment is hostile. It can trigger an immune response that actually attacks the embryo.
Which is a terrifying thought. Your own body rejecting the pregnancy.
It is. But herbal medicine has been shown time and again to reduce those inflammatory markers. By cooling down the whole system, you are signaling to the body that it's safe to reproduce.
So if we zoom out and look at this entire picture, we have a listener who might be struggling. They're looking at the stats. What's the takeaway?
The takeaway is that we need to broaden our definition of technology. We think technology is a laser or a genetic test, but a protocol that systematically lowers vascular resistance, optimizes mitochondrial output, and regulates hormonal signaling.
That's a form of technology, too.
It is. It's just an older technology that we're finally measuring with modern tools. The source material really emphasizes that knowledge is most valuable when it's applied. The data is there. The question is, are we using it?
It's interesting because in every other area of health, we accept these connections. We know stress causes heart issues. We know inflammation causes arthritis. We accept that our lifestyle and our environment impact our organs. But for some reason, when it comes to fertility, we tend to treat the uterus like it's in a vacuum, like it's completely separate from all the body's other noise.
That is the cognitive dissonance we need to break. The reproductive system is arguably the most sensitive system to that noise.
So here's the thought I want to leave everyone with today. We live in a world that worships high-tech solutions. And make no mistake, IVF is an absolute miracle. But maybe the future of fertility isn't just about higher tech intervention.
Maybe it's about high-touch integration.
Exactly. If we accept that the body is an ecosystem, maybe the best way to create life is to combine the best of the lab with the best of the body's own healing mechanisms. It's not about choosing one or the other.
It's about stacking the odds in your favor,
Yeah.
preparing the soil so the seed has the best possible chance to thrive.
Well said. That's it for this deep dive. We hope this cleaned up some of the mystery and the science behind acupuncture and herbs. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.